In this video, we'll be focusing on the fundamental footwork patterns and combinations we use in our training. As in our previous videos, we want to go very slow in the beginning, take our time, work our form, and not make it about application right away. The move we're going to start with is a square pattern. It's a combination of two movements we worked in our previous video, fundamental footwork. A short shuffle forward, a side step, a short shuffle back, and a side step again. You can also perform this with a long range shuffle. I just happen to be showing it with a short range shuffle. This video is not intended to teach every possible combination of every possible footwork drill we have. Instead, what we're doing is giving ourselves the ability to move forward, back, left, right in circles, angle, without any hesitation. I want to be able to go from one type of movement to another type of movement seamlessly. As you're going over these movements slowly, remember not to concentrate on application. Just focus on your form, focus on your breathing, focus on your balance. This is not a fight, so don't treat it as such. And just as we did in our previous videos, occasionally go ahead and stop, check your stance. Put your knee down, make sure you're not too deep or too shallow. Check your width, make sure you're not too wide, your height, make sure your knees aren't locked out. Check all those things. All of that stuff still matters. And as with every drill we do, we want to work in both our right and left lead. So even though I'm showing it right now in my right lead, understand that you should also work it in your left lead. And also moving in each direction, left and right, forward and back, and every combination of those things. Okay, so now let's move a little faster with the same drill. What I want to do is try not to pause between any change of direction. So right now, I'm basically splitting the square in half, where I'm doing a side step and a shuffle, or a shuffle and a side step. But you can also make it a complete square in both directions. That's more for conditioning, not necessarily how you would actually use it. With that being said, you can also now start making it how you would use it maybe. So if I shuffle back and sidestep really quick, or sidestep and then shuffle forward really quick, or any other combination of that. And in my head, I could think about moving outside of my opponent and then charging in, or, moving back and then sidestepping away. You get the idea. This is really just for agility and dexterity and confidence in our stepping. I don't want to feel unsure or shaky in my footing. I should be able to move forward, back, left, right, up, down, circles, all those things without too much thought or preparation. Which is another important point. When I'm moving quickly, another thing I'm trying to work is not telegraphing. I don't want to set up that I'm going to go forward or back or left or right. You'll see, and you'll probably notice in yourself in the beginning, if you're new to this, that you'll kind of lean in one direction, forward, back, left, or right when you're getting ready to move. You want to try to limit that as much as possible. So now we're doing a diamond pattern. This is a combination of three movements now. We have a female triangle, and then we're stepping forward, and then we have a male triangle, and we're stepping back. Now there is direct application for all of these patterns, but again, I can't stress it enough. Don't think about the application as you're learning and practicing these movements. When you're moving faster, you can kind of add that in. But for right now, just focus on the form. And you can see there's a weight transfer each time I'm stepping. And I'm making it very robotic, hitting those points of the diamond pretty hard. You can also later round that out with no stopping and play with it that way as well. You can see as I'm making it a little smoother now, not stopping quite so hard. Again, work both directions, left and right. You can switch directions in the middle of your diamond as well. Again, there's so many possibilities when you start combining your footwork drills. So be creative, come up with your own. You can write down patterns that you want to try. You can freestyle, you can do both. But now we'll work it a little faster. And sometimes I'll do it just like this, where it's a continuous movement just to work my dexterity and my relaxation and ability to change directions without stopping. But then sometimes I might work it as an actual technique. Switch directions and step forward, switch directions and step back. Make sure you're breathing. Are your hands up? Is your chin slightly down? Are your feet getting too far apart? Are they too narrow? Are your feet flat? All of those things, always, always, always go through your checklist every once in a while and make sure you're still following the fundamental principles of how we move. And once you start moving, you should pretty much always be on the balls of your feet. Forward, back, it doesn't matter. For the most part, you're going to be on the balls of your feet, at least weighted more heavily on the balls of your feet. There are times when you'll step forward, heel, toe, or step back, toe, heel. But to move in any kind of quick fashion, you pretty much have to be on the balls of your feet. That's true in pretty much any type of sport or martial arts. That's always going to remain pretty constant. With this diamond drill, sometimes you'll change shoulders with your feet and sometimes you don't. There's many reasons to do one or the other, so you want to play with both. That'll make more sense when we add in striking in later videos. Now we're going to work an X pattern. This is a combination of a long range shuffle and a triangle. So I just did a step back and then male triangle, and now step forward and female triangle. That's the basis of the movement. You can switch it up in any different ways, as you'll see I will do a little bit later. But I just want to follow that X. And if you kind of look on the floor, that's just what you're tracing with your feet. So female triangle, step back, male triangle, step forward. Female triangle, step back, male triangle, step forward. If you want to change directions, step back, male triangle, step up, female, or step back again, male triangle. So you can kind of mix up that X. You don't have to follow it so precisely. Again, that's not how it functions. That's just to train your body. Try not to bounce up and down too much. If you're working more conditioning, then go ahead and drop really low and work it like that. So to change directions, you just basically will work the triangle again. So if I do a triangle and then step up, I would do the triangle again and step back, or triangle 3 times and step forward, and then step back and triangle and step forward. Any combination of how to put these movements together is going to make up this pattern. So again, it's a female triangle and a male triangle and a step forward or step back. So let's do that X pattern a little faster now. And when we practice things fast, it doesn't mean as fast as you possibly can with complete disregard for how. The rule you always want to hold yourself to is that I want to move as fast and strong as I can with good or perfect form. Strength, speed, power, all those things come from good form. So if you just focus on your form, they'll come. Don't put them ahead of, doing it well. And as you can see, sometimes I'll work the pattern exactly as it is, and then sometimes I'll mix it up. So in this, it's really about changing sides or changing angles quickly. So not letting your feet rest in any one position. Make sure you're breathing, hands up. If you're having trouble coming up with new ways to do it, that's a good idea to then write it out and then just follow it like a new drill you just made up. All right, so now we're going to do an hourglass pattern. This is basically the same as the X pattern, but we're going to close the ends, top and bottom. So essentially it's a step forward and step back with a closed female or male triangle, or a Jenga on either end of it. So closing it at the top or bottom allows us to step over left or right horizontally and then come forward. There are a lot of applications for that, but again, that's not important right now. What's important is balance, structure, timing, rhythm, relaxation, strength and conditioning. One of the cool things about doing these drills in sand or dirt is that you can actually draw the pattern on the ground with your feet. So sometimes you might want to practice lifting your feet up and placing them, but for the most part, your feet should just kind of glide along the ground. So we'll do that a little faster. And note how you move differently as you change your intent. You can see that once you start moving faster, your movements tend to tighten up or shorten a little bit, which is why a lot of times when you're moving slow or practicing slow, it's helpful to exaggerate the movements a bit. Because usually as you get more intense with it, you'll shorten them up. So if you're practicing really short, small movements, when you do them full speed, they might be even shorter and smaller. So just pay attention to how that works. And sometimes you can try to trip yourself up, make it complicated. As you go, keep thinking like switch directions, switch directions, switch directions without giving yourself time to settle into any one foot position. So now we're going to do a step forward or back with a pivot. And remember, we can pivot in and we can pivot out. So we're going to do a combination of all those here. Step forward, pivot out. Step forward, pivot out. Step forward, pivot out. So now we step forward, pivot in, step back, pivot in. So many ways to combine it. You can step forward, pivot out, pivot in, step back, mix it up. Again, these drills are just the base to work from. You still have to add so much and really pay attention to your training, invest in your training. Don't just blindly follow the drill as is. But you have to start there. Again, absolutes and abstracts. So here's an absolute of a pattern or a combination. Step back, pivot in. Step forward, pivot in. Step forward, pivot out. All right, so let's do that a little faster now. What you'll notice with all these pivoting movements, really with all of our footwork, you should be engaging your core and your hips way more than you think. That's how you're going to spin quick and make it more responsive. If you think of your legs swinging back around, it's going to be very slow, cumbersome. It's easy to lose your balance like that or lean too far forward or back. So think of it more happening in your torso. So your hips, core, shoulders, just, the trunk of your body really needs to be involved in this. So now we're going to work a shuffle and a pivot. So instead of stepping forward or back, we're going to use a shuffle. Right now I'm doing a short range shuffle and a pivot out, but of course you could do a long range shuffle and pivot out or in, and you can also mix them up. Do a short range shuffle, pivot in, pivot out, long range shuffle forward, long range shuffle back, long range shuffle forward, pivot in. Mix it all up. It's really important to make your training your own. You can't just rely on what you're doing in your class with your teacher. That's the base. Just like these videos, it's a place to work from, but if you're not adding a little bit of your own thoughts to it, it's just not going to work well for you. So now we're doing a long range shuffle, and a pivot. Long range shuffle forward, pivot in, long range shuffle back, pivot in, long range shuffle forward, pivot in, long range shuffle back, pivot out. Let's go through that a little quicker now. And don't worry if you end up doing another type of footwork movement in the midst of, the drill that you're working. That's fine. The goal of any drill is not to be an expert at the drill. You want to get the attributes from the drill. If you're practicing or you're working jumping jacks, you're not trying to be the greatest jumping jack person of all time. What you're trying to do is get the benefits of jumping jacks. So this is the same thing. You're not trying to be the best person who's ever done, a shuffle and a pivot. What you're trying to do is make those drills actually useful for you. So it's not important how perfectly you follow the exact pattern. You want to execute them perfectly, but the pattern itself could be anything. This is just a great place to start to give you a wide variety of options when you're moving. Don't forget to check the stance, make sure you're not too wide, narrow, high, low, all that stuff. So now we'll sidestep and pivot. You could see once we added the pivots in, it became about angling and pivoting, and then linear forward and back and pivoting, and now sidestepping and pivoting. If you consider it, you can only really move in a few directions. I can move forward and back, left or right, or in a circle, or in like a angling, like a triangle type of motion. That's it. So any combination is going to be some kind of variation of that. So I step offline and then pivot. Sidestep, pivot in, sidestep, pivot in, sidestep, pivot in. You can also do this one with just moving the first leg on your sidestep. So it's like half of a sidestep and then pivot. You don't need to do a complete sidestep in application. So you can drill that way as well. Make sure you're going in both directions, left and right, in and out, and all the combinations that you can do with those two movements. I'm going to go through that a little quicker now. And try to keep your shoulders relaxed. Don't tense up. And you also don't have to stop on a dime. I want to be able to move quickly once I reach a new position, but I don't want to stop. I'm not trying to be a robot with this. I'm trying to just move quickly and freely. I really don't want to settle down and lock my legs into place. I should be able to just keep moving. Doing a side step to your inside and then pivoting in will probably be the most challenging for you in this combination. So don't shy away from that. Make sure to do that. It's always easier to move to our outside and pivot out. So now we're going to do our triangle and pivot. So I do a female triangle, pivot out. Female triangle, pivot out. Male triangle, pivot out. Male triangle, pivot out. And then obviously we're going to pivot in with both of those as well. When you're stringing together longer combinations of footwork, you could do, for example, female triangle, pivot out, step forward, side step, step forward, male triangle. There's so many ways to do it. I'm going to do that a little faster now. If you take all of these drills and work them, do a round of 1 to 2 minutes of each drill slow, and then the next circuit you'll do 1 to 2 minutes of each drill fast. It's a great footwork workout, and you can just add that in the beginning or end or middle of whatever your training day looks like. Usually in my classes, footwork starts every class. And I know it's tempting to just go right into the application of stuff. You want to start punching and kicking and kneeing and headbutts and all that stuff. And it's fun, it's great. But your footwork is way more important than all that. So put the time in, do the work. Okay, so this is a drill I call 3-step. And essentially what we're doing is stepping over with the front leg, pivoting in, and then stepping back. Okay, step over, step around, step back. Step over, step around, step back. Very useful drill. A lot of benefits in application, and then also just in conditioning. This is also a drill that I'll work very, very low and make all my students work very low as well. Great conditioning. And you don't have to step back. You could step over, step around, and step forward as well. But the base of this drill is step over, step around, step back. So do that a little faster now. Over, around, back. Over, around, back. Over, around, back. And over, around, back. You could add another drill to this. Do your 3-step and then a triangle pivot or whatever. Again, the combinations are literally endless. You could fill entire notebooks full of various combinations of all the footwork drills you have. And that's all great, but in reality, if you're not using any of those in your sparring, there's no point. Again, the goal is not to be the master of the drill. The goal is to master the attributes you get from the drill. So you may come up with a really crazy footwork sequence and you think you're pretty awesome, but if that's completely useless in sparring or pressure testing, then there's no reason to do that unless you get something out of it. So train with purpose, train with focus, be considerate of all your movements. Don't waste your time doing nonsense that won't help you. So that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that helps a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.